Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. I'm ready for the event.
Houston ACR, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Houston ACR. How do you hear me?
I've got you loud and clear. How do you hear me?
I have you loud and clear. Please stand by for opening remarks.
I have you loud and clear. Please stand by for opening remarks.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Here at the Cradle of Aviation Museum here on Long Island is thrilled to be part of this morning's downlink. I'm Andy Parton, president of the Cradle, and we've got a theater full of exciting kids busting at the seams. As you may know, Long Island's legacy in space started with the Apollo program. In fact, every lunar module that took us to the moon was built just 15 miles from where I'm standing. So today is another exciting moment for Long Island to be speaking with you today. Now, here's our first question.
Hi, my name is Rowan, and my question is, astronauts talk about something called the overview effect when they see Earth from space. Did that happen to you, and do you think it will affect the way you live your life on Earth?
Yes, the overview effect is certainly something real, and I know that it affects most astronauts, sometimes in pretty similar ways. I think the first thing that astronauts really appreciate is how incredibly gorgeous and special our planet is, but also how fragile it is. You look back at the Earth, and there's this tiny little thin band of the atmosphere. And as you probably know, it's that atmosphere that's the only thing that supports all life on Earth. So it makes us realize when we have that privilege to look down and see the Earth from above, how special our planet is and how we really all must do our part to try and protect it. It also shows us how insignificant it is in the grand scheme of the universe, just this one small pale blue dot in the blackness of space. And I think that gives us some good perspective about how we approach all different things in life.
Hi, my name's Amelia, and my question is, what is something you miss from Earth and something you love about space?
Well, something that I miss very, very much is my daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter at home, and just like if you were in space, I'm sure you would miss your parents and they would miss you. I miss her very, very much. Something I love about space is just being in microgravity all the time, when I can just do this with absolutely no effort, spin around in a somersault. I can shoot off down the module. Being in weightlessness is so much fun, and the views are absolutely incredible.
Hi, my name is Kendra, and my question is, can you see the whole Earth?
Unfortunately, we cannot actually see the entire Earth from our vantage point here on the space station, and that's because we are only 250 miles above the Earth, so we can only see a small portion of it. Our friends on the Artemis mission, who recently went all the way to the moon and went around the moon, they were far enough away from the Earth that they could look back and see the entire planet. But for us on the space station, we only see just a small part of it.
Hi, my name is Valentina, and my question is, how do you feel before leaving Earth?
Sorry, can you repeat that one, please?
The question was, how do you feel before leaving Earth?
How do I feel before leaving Earth? That is a very complicated process, I think, for all of us, because everybody feels different levels of excitement and anticipation. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was even younger than you guys. I was 5 years old when I started saying I wanted to be an astronaut, and I said it my entire life. So I was so excited that my dream was coming true. You've worked so hard your entire life, and you've prepared and done all of this training. So you also have this little bit of nervousness trying to make sure sure that you do everything right, that you know everything, you learned everything you needed to. But for me, I think mostly it was just this absolute excitement that my dream was coming true. And sometimes it was actually quite difficult to believe. Even when I was on the rocket, I had been in simulators so many times before that it just seemed like the same as the simulator. And then I would hear the rocket groan or move a little bit, and I realized that this time I was going to end up in space. So it was incredibly exciting.
Hi, my name is Eliza, and my question is, what are some challenges you faced when becoming an astronaut?
What does it take to become an astronaut, I think was the question. It's a little bit distorted our comm right now, so sorry, I'm having a little bit of difficulty hearing. I'll try to adjust the volume a little bit. But for us to become astronauts, one of the things that we all have in common is that we have a STEM degree: science, technology, engineering, and math. So if you like any of those subjects, you would be very well suited to come work with us at NASA, whether it's up here as an astronaut or it's down on the ground as a flight controller or an engineer or a scientist building things or testing things. We need all kinds of people at NASA. We also need people that are lawyers. We need people that are administrators. We need all types of different people. So even if you don't have a STEM degree and you're interested in NASA, there could be a spot there for you as well.
Hi, my name is Annabelle, and Ibrahim's question is, what kind of noises do you hear on the space station, and how do you get used to them?
Sorry, I didn't catch that question either.
The question was, what kind of noises do you hear on the space station, and how do you get used to them?
What kind of noises do we hear on the space station? Well, the space station is an incredibly noisy place. All around me right now in this module, maybe that's why I'm having such a difficulty hearing you, because I have so much background noises. There's background noise coming from different fans, from different pieces of hardware all around me, from all the different systems of the International Space Station. There's lots of different machines running. If you think about when you're at home in the kitchen, sometimes you can hear your refrigerator running or different appliances as they're operating, so it's really, really noisy up here. Yesterday, we heard something pretty interesting because our Russian cosmonaut colleagues were doing a spacewalk outside. So when we floated down to their module, we could actually hear them because they were very close to the outside of where we were, and they were, we could hear some banging and clanging around, and that's pretty unusual to hear something from the outside like that.
Hi, my name is Frankie, and my question is, what is your favorite experiment in space?
My favorite experiment in space. There are so many different experiments that we do up here on the International Space Station. And I'll talk about some that I really love doing because I've been doing them for the past week or so. And they are right here in this that you can see in the corner of the view here. This is actually the Life Sciences glove box. And it's a special little mini laboratory where you can stick your arms through these armholes in the front. And then you have this little contained laboratory to keep your experiments clean and sterile, and then also to keep the environment safe in case there are any chemicals or anything that we're using. So I was doing some really interesting cell biology experiments, and one of them was looking at different types of cells in your body, mainly ones that are produced in bone marrow or they're produced in as part of your blood cells, basically. So they're called megakaryocytes and also platelets. And these types of cells are very, very important in the clotting response for blood. So, when you cut yourself, you stop bleeding eventually because your blood clots. And that's a very important process. But sometimes astronauts actually get clots in their bodies in space, and that can actually be quite harmful. It can lead to things like strokes, and we don't want anything like that to happen up here on the space station. So by studying different types of cell biology experiments like that one, we can learn a lot and how to help astronauts in the future. And a lot of these experiments also have really strong applications to human medical conditions on the ground. So the research that we do up here can literally help patients survive on the ground.
Hi, my name is Henrik,
and my question is, we know you're growing food, but what is your favorite thing you are growing?
That's a great segue from the previous question because a lot of our experiments up here, or at least some of them, involve growing things that are actually food items. On my first mission to the International Space Station, we grew Mizuna lettuce, and that was this big leafy lettuce, and we were growing it under two different wavelengths of light, a reddish light and a bluish light. And the best part about that experiment was that at the end of it, we had to harvest the samples, and of course we had to send some back down to the scientists on the ground, but the other part we got to eat, and we got to have a fresh salad, which made me really, really happy because we don't have a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables up here. Right now, just in the module that I can see on the other side of the space station here, we are growing alfalfa in the same facility where we grew that lettuce. So two different types that I've witnessed, but we've also grown a lot of other types of vegetables, bok choy, we've grown peppers and tomatoes, some really interesting stuff, and it makes for a great snack, and it's a great way for us to spend our time with something alive and green and growing here on the space station.
Hello, my name is Samson, and my question is, how long is the trip to the International Space Station?
So it actually only takes a little bit over 8 minutes to get to space. Once those engines of your rocket ignite, you are in space and in weightlessness like this in only just over 8 minutes. But then it depends on which vehicle you fly on and how long it takes for you to get to the space station. Because you not only have to get to space, you also have to then meet up with the space station in a certain point so that you can dock together. And that's all dictated by where you are when you launch and where the space station is when you launch and where you're going to rendezvous as well. So for me, my first flight was on a Russian Soyuz rocket. In that vehicle, it took us 6 hours to reach the space station. Now, Soyuz missions actually only take about 3 hours, so that's 2 orbits around the Earth. Pretty fast. For us in the SpaceX Dragon, we actually took a little bit longer, just again based on where the space station was when we launched and where we were. And it took us over 30 hours to get to the space station. So we spent much more time in the vehicle than I did on my previous mission.
Hi, my name is Genesis, and my question is, how do things feel different when you return to Earth?
Everything feels very, very different when you return to Earth from space, and I know that from my previous mission. As you can see, when I'm up here, I can just spin around like I was talking about, and I'm floating all of the time. So my body really starts getting used to that. I can push myself off just very gently and then float back down, and I never put shoes on or walk around. I'm always floating and moving around like this, just with a gentle touch. And when I get back to Earth, I'm going to feel that gravity again. I literally will feel like things are pressing down on me, and it actually takes quite a bit of time for you to start feeling normal again because your body is just used to having this floating feeling and to being offloaded by gravity. So you're quite tired when you come back. You feel pretty exhausted pretty easily, and I sometimes described it as when you have a bully at the playground that's, pushing you down, putting their hand on your head and pushing you down. That's kind of how it feels when you come back to gravity because you're literally feeling that weight of gravity. I had a saying when I got back from my first flight, and it was, gravity is overrated.
Hi, my name is Sienna, and my question is, what is in your spacesuit to weigh you down on a spacewalk?
Well, that's an interesting question. We don't need anything in our spacesuit to weigh us down because I think, maybe you're thinking about a balloon. If you let a balloon go and it has helium in it and so it rises up and it's floating away. Here in space, though, when we're floating, see, if I stop moving, if I lift my legs up, I'm not going to move anywhere. I'm just going to float here in place without moving. And that's the same thing if we're outside in a spacesuit. Basically, us, the space station, the spacesuit, everything is in orbit around the planet, and it is falling continuously back toward Earth, but everything is falling at the same rate. And that's really what weightlessness means. So when we go out in a spacesuit, we don't need anything to weigh us down. We are in the suit, and we are weightless, and so is the suit, and so we can move around freely, just like I'm doing here. We can grab onto a handrail over here, and then we can move over here and grab onto something else, and we don't need anything else inside the spacesuit to help us do that.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and my question is, how and what do you eat and drink in space?
We have a lot of different types of space food up here and quite a bit of variety, which is really nice when you're up here for 7 months like we will be. We have a whole food lab down at NASA in Houston that's developing new foods all the time. Most of these foods are dehydrated, so they take the water out so that it'll be preserved and they can launch a smaller mass. And then we add the water back to it when we get up here. Some of the other food items, like for example, a piece of grilled chicken, is just launched in this special sealed pouch, and we put it into our food warmer so that we can warm it up. This is how we drink. This is a drink bag, and we fill it full of water from a machine that we can attach this part to, and it has a little needle. We insert our straw, and we just do this, but I'll do a little demonstration for you. It's more fun sometimes to do this. Instead of drinking out of the straw, I can make bubbles like this, and they can float around, and this is just water. I better get it before it hits something. So that's how we eat and drink in space.
Hi, my name is Tessa. My question is, what is sleeping like on the space station? How do you not float away?
So to sleep on the International Space Station, we each have our own little area called our crew quarters, and that's our only personal space. And that's most of the time what we're doing if we're in our little crew quarters area is sleeping. We have a sleeping bag that is attached to the wall because in space you don't need to lie down. There is no up or down, so I can put my sleeping bag up here on the ceiling or on the wall or on any surface. Usually people have it attached to the wall because you don't want to float away. You know, because we have a ventilation system up here on the space station, you could get caught in an air current and start floating around, and that might wake you up. So it makes most people feel quite comfortable if you put the sleeping bag on the wall and you get inside, you zip it up, and then you can either just kind of float there like this. I usually wedge myself in a corner a little bit. It feels a little bit more like a bed at home when I'm in that position, but I sleep really well up here, and most people do.
Hi, my name is Donald, and my question is, do you prefer the gravity of Earth or the microgravity of space?
That's an interesting question, and I think I sort of alluded to it earlier when I talked about coming home from my first mission and saying gravity is overrated. I think microgravity is a lot more fun because it turns, I think, us adults more into kids like you, where we have a little bit more lightness. We're a little bit more apt to play, to spin around in circles like I was doing, to play with our food like I was doing with our water. And I think it just makes things a lot more fun when we have that kind of playful spirit. But I will also be happy to go back down to Earth and to have gravity again, because sometimes things are difficult without microgravity, when anything can just float away from you if you don't Velcro it or hold it or put it down somewhere. And in the beginning, that really takes you a lot of time to adjust to.
Hi, my name is Gabby, and my question is, if someone is hurt or sick, do you have any type of medicine?
Well, especially since we're up here for very long periods of time, like 7 months, like I mentioned, then it is pretty likely that something's going to happen. Somebody's going to, just scrape themselves and need a Band-Aid. Somebody might develop something that they need some medicine for. We really have a lot of screening before we come to space, so we try to prevent any big things, but of course things can happen to any human, even if you're healthy when you get up here. So we're very well prepared up here on the International Space Station. We have a lot of different types of medications that we might need for any scenario that might pop up. We have other types of life-saving equipment if somebody were to have a heart attack or need to have their heart restarted. We have what's called a defibrillator so that we can try to do that. We can give somebody CPR. We have all of these different types of medical equipment and medicines so that we're very, very well prepared. If somebody had a very serious medical condition, we would actually just get into the vehicle if that was deemed safe and get home, because then we could be home within a few hours to get them to a hospital scenario if that's needed.
Hi, I'm Carrie Kiker, the Planetarium Manager at the Cradle of Aviation. I want to thank the NASA Downlink staff for all their help and support, the students and teachers for their great questions, and most of all, a thank you to the International Space Station crew for taking the time to talk with us today.
It was certainly my pleasure to be here speaking with you today. I know that you at the museum do so much to inspire. For example, my colleague Jack Hathaway, who's up here right now, remembers going to your museum as a child. He grew up in Connecticut, so he wasn't too far away, and he turned out to be not only an astronaut, but a Navy F-18 pilot. So thank you for inspiring the next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers. Goodbye.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.